For American troops serving in Vietnam during the 1960s, it was almost impossible to escape the sound of Jimi Hendrix. His blazing guitar solos poured from radios, record players, and 8-track tape decks wherever soldiers gathered. Whether they were stationed in remote outposts or busy military bases, Hendrix's music seemed to be everywhere. 1968, his album Electric Ladyland became a massive success. Critics praised it, fans bought millions of copies, and Hendrix's reputation as a musical genius continued to grow. Many listeners became so familiar with his version of All Along the Watchtower that they assumed he had written it himself, unaware it was originally a Bob Dylan song. Tracks such as Purple Haze and The Wind Cries Mary became favorites, played over and over by fans around the world. Years later, Rolling Stone magazine would even name Hendrix the greatest guitarist of all time. Yet behind the legendary musician was a chapter of his life that many people never knew. Before becoming a rock icon, Jimi Hendrix wore an army uniform and served as a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne Division. An even lesser-known part of the story was how Hendrix managed to leave the army early. Facing a 3-year enlistment that stood between him and his dream of making music, he found a way to use the military regulations of the era to secure his discharge. The story began in Seattle, where Hendrix was born the day after Thanksgiving in 1942. His childhood was difficult. His family struggled financially, and eventually he dropped out of high school. Many of his friends saw military service as one of the few available career paths, and Hendrix considered the same option. At the same time, he found himself in trouble with the law after being caught riding in a stolen vehicle. Only 4 days later, he faced another arrest involving a similar offense. Suddenly, the consequences became very real. Prosecutors could pursue charges that might lead to a prison sentence of up to 10 years. But Hendrix knew that local authorities sometimes offered young men another option: leave town, join the army, and avoid prison. Looking for a way forward, Hendrix visited an army recruiter. He was particularly interested in joining the famous 101st Airborne Division. The division's soldiers, known as the Screaming Eagles, fascinated him, and he wanted to become a paratrooper. On May 16, 1961, Hendrix's public defender negotiated a plea agreement with a local district attorney. Under the deal, Hendrix received a suspended 2-year prison sentence on the condition that he enlist in the army. The very next day, he signed up for a 3-year enlistment as a supply clerk and headed to Fort Ord, California for basic training. At first, army life suited him. He adapted to military routines and appeared enthusiastic about his new path. A few months later, he received orders for Fort Campbell, Kentucky, arriving on November 8, 1961. There, he immediately entered airborne training. Excited by the opportunity, he wrote to his father, "Here I am, the place I dreamed of. I'm in the 101st Airborne. It's pretty rough, but I love it." That winter, Hendrix experienced his first parachute jump. The thrill of leaping from an aircraft left a lasting impression on him. Like many new paratroopers, he worried about the possibility of his parachute failing, but he pushed through those fears. After completing 5 successful jumps, he earned his parachutist badge and received an additional $55 per month in jump pay. By January 1962, Hendrix had been promoted to private first class and had earned the right to wear the division's famous Screaming Eagle patch. He was proud of the achievement and even purchased extra patches to send home to family members. But, as the months passed, his enthusiasm for military life began to fade. Music remained his true passion. Wherever he went, his guitar was close at hand. Soon he formed a band with fellow soldiers and spent weekends performing around Nashville. The group also traveled to military bases, including appearances as far away as Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The more Hendrix focused on music, the less interested he became in army life. Still, he understood the consequences of simply walking away. Going AWOL could result in court-martial proceedings and possible imprisonment. By April 1962, after serving only about 10 months of his 3-year commitment, Hendrix decided on a different strategy. During meetings with an army psychiatrist at Fort Campbell, he claimed that he had developed homosexual tendencies and had experienced romantic thoughts about male soldiers in his unit. During a later appointment, he stated that he was in love with one of his fellow servicemen. According to later accounts, these statements were not true. Instead, they were part of a deliberate effort to obtain a discharge from military service. At the time, Army regulations viewed homosexuality as incompatible with military service. Military leaders believed it harmed morale and discipline, and official policies classified it as a serious personality defect. Soldiers who were found to have homosexual tendencies could be discharged from the Army, often with a general or undesirable discharge, though honorable discharges were occasionally granted. Hendrix understood these regulations and knew the specific language that could trigger an investigation. In May 1962, Captain John Halbert conducted a medical evaluation of Hendrix. After reviewing the case, Halbert concluded that Hendrix was suffering from homosexuality and recommended that he be discharged on that basis. As the discharge process moved forward, Army leaders documented their opinions of Hendrix's performance. James Spears, the platoon sergeant of the Service Supply and Evacuation Platoon, submitted a statement criticizing Hendrix's conduct and work habits. According to Spears, Hendrix showed little interest in military duties, neglected his equipment, and failed to maintain his living area properly. He described Hendrix's work in the supply section as unsatisfactory and stated that repeated counseling sessions had produced no improvement. Spears also noted that Hendrix owed approximately $80 on a laundry bill and had made no effort to pay it. He accused Hendrix of falsely claiming that a friend had been given money to settle the debt. The report further stated that Hendrix often required close supervision to complete assigned tasks. The sergeant also complained that Hendrix spent much of his off-duty time playing guitar in a band. According to the statement, these musical activities caused him to miss bed checks and lose sleep, which affected his military responsibilities. Spears concluded that Hendrix had no real interest in Army service and recommended that he be discharged as soon as possible. Evidence suggests that Hendrix ultimately received at least a general discharge under honorable conditions. His final paycheck included compensation for 21 days of unused leave, a benefit that normally would not have been paid to someone discharged under other than honorable conditions. Once back in civilian life, Hendrix devoted himself fully to music. As his fame grew, he never publicly admitted that he had used Army regulations to secure an early release. Instead, he often told friends that he had injured his ankle during his 26th parachute jump and had been discharged because of the injury. However, military records contain no indication that such an injury was responsible for his separation from the Army. Had Hendrix lived longer, he likely would have witnessed dramatic changes in American attitudes toward lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals, including significant policy changes within the U.S. military itself. Tragically, his life ended long before those changes occurred. According to biographer Charles R. Cross in Roomful of Mirrors, Hendrix's death was linked to his reckless combination of drugs and alcohol. On September 18, 1970, he died in London at the age of just 27. Hendrix was not the only legendary musician to have served in the military after World War II. Johnny Cash served in the Air Force from 1950 to 1954, while Elvis Presley served in the Army from 1958 to 1960. But Hendrix's story remained unique. He was the only one of the three who became a paratrooper, and his unusual understanding of military regulations ultimately helped him return to civilian life much sooner than anyone might have expected. From the jump towers of the 101st Airborne to the stages of the world's biggest concert halls, his journey was anything but ordinary.